Hey everybody, this is Mr. Storm, and in this video we're going to talk about how to create new methods. So far we've been using one method in all of our programs. That one method is the main method. So if you remember the static void main string args, it's this guy up here, right? That one method is what we've been using in every single program. And then everything that our program does goes inside of that method. Well, that's fine for smaller programs, but what if we have a large program that has different sections in it? Or what if we have a program that does a bunch of things, or it does one thing a bunch of times, right? Well, we can create separate methods that we can then call whenever we need to use them. So let's take a look at this example down here. So right here, this is all the main method, the section of code that I've highlighted. This is the main method. So we have question, open and close parentheses. That looks weird. Never seen that before. And then we have console write line 42. Well, what does that mean? Well, this question, open and close parentheses, this is a method call. We're calling a custom method that we have somewhere in the game. And as a matter of fact, outside of the main method, we have this new method that we've created called static void question. Okay? It matches the question call up here, or the method call up here. And inside that method, we have a line of code that says console.writeLine, what is the answer to life, the universe, and everything? So if we think about the sequence of this program, here's what would happen. The main method always runs first in C#. So the main method is going to run first. So we run the main method. So the first statement inside the main method is this call to another method, this method call. Now to call a method, you just call it by its name, and then you have an open and close parentheses. Now you can put arguments inside of the parentheses, parameters inside the parentheses. We're going to talk about that in the next lesson. So for now, we're just going to do open and close parentheses. So this calls that method, which means we break out of this method and move down to the method we've now called. We do all the code inside of that method, which is putting a write line string onto the screen. Then we return back to the method that we jumped out of, and then we move on to the next line. So if we execute this program, it should say, what is the answer to life, universe, and everything? 42. Okay, so this is a very simple example of how to use methods. Let's actually see how this works in practice. All right, so I'm gonna fix my brackets here. Okay, now, if I were to just go ahead and call the method question, then that'll be fine, but if I run my code, it's going to throw an error, meaning the name question does not exist in the current context. That's because I'm calling a method that my compiler doesn't recognize. So what I need to do is create the new method, right? Now, let's talk about what these words mean. So public static void, public static void. So public is the scope of the method. Basically, is this going to be accessible by any other class, which we'll talk about class next week, or is this only going to be accessible by the main class of my program? Void is going to basically indicate, is this going to return anything of value? For us, it's not. So public static void, we're going to call this question. Now my IntelliSense on REPL is like, oh, hey, you called a method, but it doesn't exist, so let's help you finish up your question method. Now we're going to do open and close parentheses. Then we need some brackets. So now inside this method, we want it to do something. So we're going to say console.writeLine universe and everything. All right. So this method will only do one thing. It'll just run that one console.writeLine. And inside here, we're going to say 42, because that is the answer to life, the universe, and everything. So let's run this and see what this code does. Check it out. So it says, what is the answer to life, the universe, and everything? 42, right? Now it showed this, it put this on the screen first because we called the method before we got down to this console.writeLine statement. Now, methods are great for handling things that we would normally, do over and over again in a program. So if we, let's say the example of our trivia game that we built, let's say we had a method that would compare, we had a method that would take in some, we'll talk about taking in values. Actually, that's probably not a good example to bring up right now. Let's say we had a method that would handle each question, right? And the way we structured our game was we would call the first question method, and then it would go to the first question. And then when that was done, it would return back up to the main method, and then we'd have the next method that would be called the second question method that would handle it. So that helps us to kind of control how we move through our game. That's something that we could have done in our last project, and that's something that we're going to use. That's a concept we're going to use when we get into our second power standard. We're going to use methods to structure bulk, in bulk. We're going to structure some, logical sets of code inside of methods, and we're going to use method calls to move from one section to another. Okay, let's see. A couple things about methods. Yeah, make sure that you are, when you use a method call, make sure you are calling it exactly the way you wrote it. For void methods, it's always fine to use public static unless you have a specific reason to make it a private method. But for the most part, public methods are totally fine. Let's see. Yeah, I mean, that's really pretty much it. I mean, it seems like a simple concept, and it really, really is. Honestly, it's not that difficult. Now, when we talk about parameters in the next lesson, it could get a little bit more wonky, but, we're smart people. We can figure out things that are a bit difficult. So I'm going to stop rambling and let you guys get onto that lesson. I will see you in the parameters video.